creatine's come up a couple times. For
Yes.
somebody looking for adjuncts, obviously you need to do the work and find out where your holes are.
Yes.
I assume creatine would be one you'd recommend people look into.
Yeah.
Number one, would it be? And then any other supplements that you find when it comes to energetics and brain health, people should consider.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there, as I said, the armamentarium is large. So, yeah, so the studies have shown anywhere from 10 to 20 grams of creatine. So I typically recommend you start with 5 grams once or twice a day and then move up to, you can go up to ultimately 10 grams twice a day. That's the range that has been helpful for brain health and for cognition. And of course, similar ranges for building muscle and things like that. So yes, creatine is a good one. I should mention one of the common failures I hear is that people are saying to me, hey, I just heard that putting a crystal on your forehead makes you think smarter. Should I do that? And I say, look, the vast majority of people, it's the basics that they're missing. Optimize those basic 7 things that we talked about. Get that as a foundation. Now you have a firm foundation on which to stand. Now, things like stem cells or things like photobiomodulation, that now you can build on something. These studies, again, that are doing stem cells only, this is like trying to rebuild a house as it's burning down. You got to put out the fire first. You've got to address what's causing the problem first. Now you can begin to rebuild. Now the idea of stem cells, it makes much more sense. So you mentioned creatine, and yeah, there's dozens and dozens of these things. Some of the ones of the many, and again, you're going after those things. For people who are low in vitamin D, I would include vitamin D. For people who are inflamed, I really like SPMs. These specialized pro-resolving mediators. These are really nice. For energetics, creatine. For mitochondria, PQQ. Also, urolithin A is another good one. Nicotinamide riboside or NMN or niacinamide, any of those, also very good for NAD levels. There's been some interest, as you know, in methylene blue. Theoretically, it actually makes more sense for Parkinson's, I think, than Alzheimer's. And the trial on that, as a monotherapy, failed. I don't think these trials that are on monotherapies tell you too much, because just because it failed as a monotherapy doesn't mean that it may not be part of an optimal protocol. So I do think that there is definitely some promise for methylene blue. There's also a tremendous potential for various intranasal peptides. And I think that in peptides in general, I think that there's a huge, there's not enough data on these yet, but there's a tremendous potential. Whether it's thymosin alpha-1, beta-4, whether it's I even think davunitide, which was an intranasal peptide, which again failed as a monotherapy, but I think has tremendous potential in the long run. C-Lanx, C-Max, dihexa, epitalon. There are so many of these that have real potential. Again, if you've done the basics and if you're getting rid of as long as you've got massive toxicity or massive chronic infections and metabolic syndrome, these things don't make as much a difference for you. You've really got to get at those basics first.
Or if you're not sleeping, your stress levels are through the roof.
Yeah.
We're both saying the same thing here. You got to get to the foundation.
Yeah.
These things are interesting. You can put them in, but they're not going to be a magic bullet if you're not getting the basics right.
Exactly. And of course, most people are low in magnesium in this country especially, and optimizing your magnesium levels are really helpful as another one. Of course, omega-3s. And most people in the country have poor omega-6 to omega-3 ratios, averaging about 15 to 1, when they should be more like 4 to 1. So improving your omega-3 status is another one. And so there are so many of these things. And then for people who have any sort of vascular compromise, and that's a common contributor, one of the contributors will often be some microvascular disease or occasionally macrovascular disease. There's a triad, nattokinase, nitric oxide, which you can get from, Super Beets or Neo 40 or Cialis, or, this is why the Viagra studies all of those things. So any form of nitric oxide, beetroot juice, things like that. And then arterosyl HP. Those three are a very nice triad for anyone who's got a vascular component as part of the overall drivers of decline. So those are just some of the many things. Probutyrate I happen to like because of the short-chain fatty acids coming from the gut. So that's another one I like. Improving your gut microbiome, some probiotics, prebiotics, very, very helpful. And of course, the postbiotic urolithin A that I mentioned earlier. So those are just some of the many. And again, the armamentarium is large, and knowing which ones are going to be critical for which person, very, very helpful.
With this explosion of the GLP-1 agonists,
yes,
are you seeing any direct connection to the brain, either good or bad?
I'm glad you brought that up because GLP-1, we've looked at the possibility. Again, we talked before about maybe you do for 9 or 12 months and then you start slowly removing amyloid. You could start with GLP-1s. In general, we're getting to some extent that sort of impact by having the prebiotic fiber. But there was a study recently, as you know, probably a year ago, was that people said, oh, well, GLP-1s are going to be the cure for Alzheimer's. Well, that didn't turn out to be the case. Again, tried as a monotherapy. Did not make any difference, did not help people at all to be on GLP-1s, even though theoretically it should have had at least some impact, because what you're doing is you're driving more insulin. You can get away for a short time, people who are insulin resistant, you can get away for a short time with just pushing up the insulin. You want to be physiologically relevant. So what I've been telling people is, there's this interest everywhere for AI. Everything's AI, artificial intelligence. What is more important for the medical revolution is EI, which is evolutionary intelligence. It tells us, how did we evolve? How did we get to where we are? We did not evolve to eat a ton of sugar. So you can't do that and expect to do well. So having that evolutionary intelligence, the EI, is telling us, okay, we want to bring that insulin level down. Don't just artificially push it up. So, messing with Mother Nature does not get you very far. It may give you a little impact for a few weeks or a few months. But as I said in the book, The Ageless Brain, you want the combination of performance and protection. It's easy to get short-term performance without protection. Take some speed. Cocaine will give you short-term performance without protection. It's easy to get protection without performance. You can people who go into deep freeze have their head cut off and put it in liquid nitrogen. You're never going to have Alzheimer's, but you're not going to have very good performance. We want performance and protection together, and that's by following your evolutionary optimization. So that's the key for getting best outcomes in the long run.
Since you made it to the end of this clip, I know you're going to love the full episode. Click here to watch. I'll see you over there.
About 15% of our population dies of Alzheimer's. So about 45 million of the currently living Americans will die of Alzheimer's. We can reduce that number.